David, still October, but we do have two teams playing out the string that can't get into the playoffs. And that leads us to a bit of a look ahead to what this offseason might look like, because there are some potential coaching and general manager vacancies that could come up. And let's start with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who have an interesting situation at their general manager position right now.
Yes, it certainly is, because their general manager, Kyle Walters, does not have a contract for next season. Winnipeg trying to clinch its fourth consecutive first place in the West Division, trying to get to their fourth consecutive Grey Cup. No team has done that since the then Edmonton Eskimos of the late 1970s, early 80s. So highly unusual to have a team with this much success and the GM having no deal for next season. And this was really brought to attention last December when Mike O'Shea received a 3-year extension through the end of the 2025 season, and there was no extension for Walters. And 10 months later, there have been no discussions between the Bombers and Walters about next season. So as of now, Kyle Walters is due to be a free agent at the end of this season. And certainly you talk to people around the league, there's a sense that there's been a consolidation of decision-making under Mike O'Shea, and it could be no longer in Winnipeg for Kyle Walters after this season.
Meanwhile, let's look at the province next door in Saskatchewan to see what's going to happen with the Rough Riders, where fans there are angry. They're showing it by not necessarily turning out in big numbers at the stadium anymore. You've had back-to-back tough finishes for that franchise. The last 2 months last season, the last 5 weeks this season. And really, when you look at what the organization did coming into this year, they really set themselves up for a potential change, because they allowed both head coach Craig Dickinson and general manager Jeremy O'Day to enter the final year of their contract. So those were basically show-me deals, because if there wasn't significant improvement, it did allow the organization to cleanly move on. And certainly if you listen to the fan base, they do want a level of change. We'll see what happens there. I can't imagine there won't be any meaningful change if this team doesn't somehow make a miraculous run through the playoffs and potentially wind up in the Grey Cup. So if you make a head coaching change, what does that do for the general manager? Because in Jeremy O'Day's case, it might not be as simple as rolling over his contract and giving him a 1-year extension and letting him hire his own head coach, because if he's only got 1 year left on his deal, what kind of head coaching applicant would you bring into that mix who feels comfortable about their future under that scenario? And then could you give him a long-term extension based on what's happened in the last couple of years? I think that would also be a challenge. So it feels like change on some level is coming to Saskatchewan unless there's a significant playoff run here.
Meanwhile, as we near the end of another disappointing season for the Ottawa Redblacks, all indications are that general manager Sean Burke will be back for a third season and head coach Bob Dice will be back for his second. I think it's possible there will be reviews, certainly after the season, of both the coordinator positions, Kahari Jones, the offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator Baron Miles. But if the change is going to happen, it would be at that level or below. Burke and Dice both expected back in 2024 for the Redblacks.
Yeah, and as far as Edmonton is concerned, I get the sense that a decision is going to be made very quickly on Chris Jones and his staff. Now, many people believe that with Trey Ford having the success he's had in the past month, that it might be best for him if there be some continuity one way or the other. My understanding is that current interim president Rick Lawlisher will wind up making that decision. They're not going to wait for a new president to be hired and then have them make the decision one way or the other. I think that certainty or uncertainty will take place with the current administration.